Good morning, everyone. This has been kind of bubbling under the surface, and I thought, wow, incredible. And I kind of already expected, I kind of already knew. But True North is reporting, quote, the government is monitoring private citizens' social media comments critical of Trudeau's immigration policies and sharing them with the PCO. Staffers also conducted a detailed analysis on tweets posted by Michelle Rempel and Maxime Bernier, hashtag Canadian Poly. So we're going to look at this. This is interesting. I recommend you clicking and watching this video. It's a very, very good breakdown of exactly what Mr. Lawton found when he did his Freedom of Information request. So this video is worth clicking through and watching. Please do. I'm going to read this because it's mind-blowing. And at the same time, though, I already kind of knew. Here we go. Bureaucrats in Immigration, Refugee, and Citizenship Canada were, quote, monitoring social media posts and Reddit threads for misconceptions about immigration last summer. Internal emails obtained exclusively by True North under Access to Information reveal a team of 12 communications and social media staffers reporting and conducting a, quote, detailed analysis on tweets posted not only by Conservative MP Michelle Rempel and People's Party of Canada leader Maxime Bernier, but also ordinary Canadians. The documents date to August 2018 when Bernier took aim at, quote, extreme multiculturalism, sparking a national discussion about manufactured diversity in Canada. One of the key issues for the emails involved a Reddit thread discussing a Toronto Sun article about refugees housing at a Radisson hotel. The social care team, led with IRCC, said in an email that the thread had, quote, become bigoted in nature. The vast majority of popular comments were extremely negative in tone. Quote, the comments were unfavorable to the Prime Minister and government and also very unsympathetic, sick to those claiming asylum, he wrote. In another email chain, a staffer says her department will, quote, continue to monitor the Reddit thread, which is still online. Link is at the True North page, though closed for commenting by moderators in the R Canada subreddit. Quote, the conversation provides some indication of public sentiment on housing asylum seekers, the staffer wrote. As discussed earlier, this underscores our advice to focus on numbers on the storyline and gives an indication of the types of misconceptions we might need to address going forward. She directed one colleague to share the information with the Privy Council office, which is the bureaucratic wing of the Prime Minister's office. She also assigned someone to prepare notes to brief the Deputy Minister, the highest-ranking bureaucrat in Canada's Immigration Department. The document also contains a 2-page chart of tweets from Canadians critical of the government on immigration labeled by whoever compiled them with descriptions such as, quote, condemnation of the Trudeau government and, quote, commends Max Bernier for standing up for Canada rails against diversity and irregular migration. They don't even irregular migration. Yes, you've got to comply with the UN when using internal communications. Back to the article. All of the tweets tagged Bernier and the department's official Twitter handle, the report noted. It is not known how the government is storing or using the database of tweets it's amassing through the public environment scan. That's what they're calling it, the public environment scan? Wow. Tweets. These emails prove the public service is monitoring private citizen social media comments critical of the government and sharing them with the Privy Council office. And here are the emails. This is from the Government of Canada. I'm not going to go through them, but here's the tweets. And in the video, Mr. Lawton goes through the tweets, and man, like it's like just regular people. It's very interesting what they've compiled here. Are you comfortable with this? Are you? I'm not. Here's a Toronto police news release, and I thought this was interesting. This was July 23rd, and this is happening in our country. And yet, Ralph Goodall, I didn't hear any mention of this. White supremacy, according to Mr. Goodall, deserves mention, but this, no problem. Here's Toronto Police Service saying, quote, the Toronto Police Service would like to make the public aware of a series of distraction thefts that are taking place throughout the Greater Toronto Area. It is reported that, quote, that a group of men and women are traveling around in a vehicle. In groups of 3 or more, they approach people and advise that they are looking for a hospital. They ask for directions, gas money, or for the blessings of a loved one who is sick. The group then place a piece of fake jewelry around the person's neck in gratitude. At this time, they then remove the person's jewelry. Usually the women make the initial contact while the man waits in the vehicle nearby. The women become very hands-on and aggressive. The women are described as having olive complexions and wearing headscarves, and they have been targeting elderly women and use vehicles with both Ontario and Quebec license plates. The public is asked to be aware of any suspicious vehicles or suspicious activity in the neighborhoods. I'll tell you, I traveled through Europe. We drove through Ireland and we drove through the United Kingdom, England. My family is from England, so I go there to visit sometimes. Haven't been in a few years, but last time I was there was 2013 or 2014, I think. And so I've been through England, and I've seen these crime rings. And in England and in Ireland specifically, they were referred to as gypsies. Gypsy crime rings. So this is very, very interesting because this is a well-known scam that happens, that distraction thefts are well-known. And, well, isn't it interesting that this is something that the public needs to be taking into consideration and be aware of, right? It's very, very concerning what's happening in our country. Here's the Toronto Sun for this first video's last article. Fury says, what they're not telling you about Canada's hate crime statistics. Now, this is an opinion piece, but I think it's worth noting because, opinion is based on fact here. So here we go. It's that time of year again when Canada's annual hate crime statistics are released and advocacy groups send out their press releases and take to the airwaves to break down what it all means. While there's often an alarming tone to the occasion, this year's conversation will likely be more muted than in previous years because the latest numbers have gone down 13% from 2,073 in 2017 to 1,798 in 2018. That said, as StatsCan explains, quote, even with this decline, the number of hate crimes remains higher, with the exception of 2017, than any other year since 2009, and aligns with the upward trend observed since 2014, except that, pesky 2017. I think it's so funny. If you take that out, it totally aligns with our narrative. So just report it that way, please. Just remove the things that go against the narrative. Back to the article. When broken down by identifiable group, Monday's release means a 50% drop in hate crimes targeting Muslims, 15% fewer targeting sexual orientation, 12% fewer against black individuals, and 4% drop in incidents against Jews. But this time around, before we take these numbers and try to craft a narrative around them, let's take a step back and look at how they're put together in the first place, because there's a lot of StatsCan isn't telling you about their release, and that doesn't make its way into the basic reporting. For starters, an overview of hate crimes will cover broad terrain, from graffiti that harms no one to violent incidents like the Quebec Mosque Massacre. They're both bad, and it's right to have a zero-tolerance attitude to all categories, but obviously the first one is cause for much less concern than the second one. Graffiti is less impactful necessarily than people dying, right? Back to the article. The numbers have always shown that, thankfully, the more severe forms of hate crimes are much rarer. Out of the 1,798 number, there were 138 incidents in 2018 that involved bodily harm to an individual, and only 2 of those resulted in deaths. Compare that to mischief to religious property, which had 782 incidents. Threats alone made up for 251 incidents. There's another problem with all of this data, though, one that calls into question not just how we talk about specifics, but the validity of the entire conversation itself. The StatsCan release on Monday added some interesting context. Quote, police data on hate-motivated crimes include only those incidents that come to the attention of police services. In other words, there could be more hate crimes happening that the police never heard about. That's a fair point, but they don't offer the flip side of the coin, and they should, which is that these stats aren't hate crime, full stops. They're police-reported hate crimes. What does that mean? It means what it sounds like. Someone calls the cops and says a hate crime occurred. It doesn't mean that all these cases where someone was found guilty of perpetrating a hate crime, it doesn't have to even mean the police properly investigated the incident. For many of these cases, it just means someone said something happened and the police jotted it down. When I made a media request to StatsCan Canada last year to ask for the number of actual charges, convictions, and acquittals related to hate crimes, I learned they don't compile these figures. This means they don't tally the proven cases. They count when everything is still at the potential stage. Prior to the release of this year's data, the Canadian Anti-Hate Network, our version of the controversial left-leaning Southern Poverty Law Center, called on Statistics Canada to revise their methodology. They recommended that instead of using police-reported data, StatsCan does an annual survey that asks Canadians if they've been the victim of a hate crime and takes a believe the victim's approach. Is this a wise idea? Wouldn't that only further muddy the waters? The facts tell us that alleged victims can and do lie. A special prosecutor is currently being assigned to investigate the Jussie Smollett case. A Winnipeg couple has been charged for allegedly staging an anti-Semitic attack against their own cafe. And everyone remembers the hijab hoax case in Toronto that saw none other than Prime Minister Justin Trudeau weigh in on an assault that never happened. One expert on the issue recommends Canadians ask critical questions about these statistics. What is the rate of hoax? That's a blunt question, but it is extremely useful, says Wilford Riley, Riley, a professor of political science at Kentucky State University, in an interview with The Sun. Riley studied American hate crime statistics in depth, resulting in a publication of his new book, Hate Crime Hoax: How the Left is Selling a Fake Race War. Quote, I would put the confirmed hoax rate at about 15%, cases that definitely unraveled and were provably debunked, explains Riley. 5% resulted in charges and convictions, and the rest are ambiguous. He suggests the Canadian figures could likely be similar. If we're going to have a national conversation about hate crimes every year, we're going to have to get a better idea of the data. To get better data. Or, at the very least, let Canadians know the facts behind the numbers we're discussing so they can determine their usefulness. Could the real numbers of hate crimes happening be significantly higher? Certainly. Or could we be overrun with hoaxes? That's also possible. Given what we're working with, we just don't know. And yeah, I mean, that's true. Are we having this breathless conversation in the press when there's no real problem? Just people calling in and reporting things? I don't know. And neither do StatsCan, right? And that's a problem. So check out the peoplespartyofcanada.ca. And tonight, if you're in Mississauga, check out Mr. Bernier's immigration rally. You can get tickets, and I will put the link in the description, just in case you were thinking of going, but you didn't know where it was. Here's the link. You can go. All you have to do is enter your name and email, and they will send you some tickets. Right? So have a wonderful day. I hope to see you tonight. I will be there, and have a wonderful, wonderful